used her account, but how did he pass verification? And who approved it?
I used your college fund. That's how it started. No warning, no hesitation. Just that sentence. Let me ask you something. What would you say if the one person you trusted not to cross a line said that to you like it was nothing? Samantha Reyes didn't say anything at first. She couldn't. The words didn't land all at once. They sank slowly, like something heavy dropping through water. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. On the other end of the phone, her father exhaled, almost relieved, like he'd just confessed something minor. It's fine, Daniel Reyes added quickly. I paid off my loans. Interest was getting out of control. This was the smart move. The smart move. Samantha sat frozen on the edge of her dorm bed, her laptop still open in front of her. A tuition payment page glowed on the screen. Deadline in 10 days. The number due sat there, unchanged, unforgiving. She had been staring at it for an hour before he called. Now it felt like a countdown. She finally spoke, her voice quieter than she expected. You used my college fund? Yeah, he said, almost casually. I mean, it's not like it disappeared. I just moved it, took care of something bigger. Something bigger. That fund wasn't just money. It was years of planning. Her mother's careful budgeting before she passed, Samantha's part-time jobs, late shifts, missed weekends. It was security. It was independence. And now he was talking about it like rearranging furniture. Samantha swallowed. Her pulse was starting to pick up now, but her voice didn't follow. Okay, she said. There was a pause. Not from her, but from him. He wasn't expecting that. You're okay with it? Daniel asked, a hint of confusion creeping in. Samantha's eyes flicked back to her laptop screen. That number again. Still there. Still very real. She took a slow breath. Then she asked the question that changed everything. You did it from my account? There it was. Simple, direct. On the other end, Daniel laughed. Actually laughed. Yeah, he said. Every cent. Every cent. Not, I borrowed it. Not, I'll pay it back. Not even I had to. Just every cent. Samantha didn't react. Not outwardly. But something shifted internally. Not panic. Not anger. Focus. Because something about that didn't make sense. And that's the part no one talks about in moments like this. It's not always the betrayal that hits first. Sometimes it's the confusion. Because Samantha knew her account. She knew when it was created when she was 16, with her father listed as a joint holder, but when she turned 18, that changed. The account had been converted, transferred fully into her name. She remembered signing the forms. She remembered asking questions. She remembered being told clearly that no one else would have access anymore. So, how did he just take it? You sure you're okay? Daniel asked again, now sounding slightly uneasy. Samantha blinked, snapping back into the moment. Yeah, she said, I'm fine. But she wasn't asking herself if he took it anymore. She was asking how, because if he really did move that money from her account, then something else had gone very, very wrong. They ended the call shortly after. No argument, no confrontation, just a quiet disconnect. The room felt different after that, too still. Samantha slowly reached for her phone. Opened her banking app. Logged in. For a second, nothing. Then the screen loaded. Her balance appeared. $0. Not pending. Not processing. Gone. Her eyes didn't widen. She didn't gasp. She just stared at it long enough for the reality to settle into something solid. And then she noticed something else. A transaction. Large. Recent. Authorized. Her thumb hovered over the screen, because now there was only one question left. If she didn't authorize it, who did? And 3 days later, the bank called him. The part that didn't make sense was how easy he thought it would be. That was the thought sitting in Samantha's head the next morning. Not that Daniel had taken the money. In a strange, painful way, that part fit. He had always had a talent for turning other people's stability into his emergency exit. A missed payment here. A borrowed amount there. Promises made with full confidence and broken with equal confidence. Samantha had grown up around that rhythm. But this was different. This wasn't a favor twisted out of guilt. This wasn't him asking for help and lying about why. This was direct access, clean, immediate, complete. And that meant one thing. He hadn't just crossed a line. He had gotten through a locked door. By sunrise, Samantha was sitting at the tiny desk in her dorm room, staring at the transaction history on her phone like it might change if she looked long enough. Her roommate, Maya Lynn, still half wrapped in a blanket, leaned over from the other bed. "You've been awake all night, haven't you?" Samantha didn't answer right away. She turned the screen toward her. Maya squinted. "What am I looking at?" "My college fund." Maya frowned. "Okay. It was transferred out 2 days ago." Maya looked up. "Transferred where?" Samantha's mouth tightened. "To pay off my dad's loans." That got Maya fully awake. "Wait, what?" Samantha told her. Not dramatically, not in some huge emotional spill, just the facts. The late night call, his voice, the laugh, the words every cent. Maya sat there for a second, processing. Then she asked the exact question Samantha had been asking herself for hours. "How did he even get into your account?" And there it was again, the real problem. Samantha opened the account details page. She knew what it would say before she saw it. Primary owner, Samantha Reyes. No joint holder listed, no secondary access, no parent authorization. She had checked it 3 times already. "When I was 16, it was joint," Samantha said. "When I turned 18, they changed it. I signed paperwork. They told me he wouldn't have access anymore." Maya looked back at the transaction history. "Then this shouldn't be possible." "Exactly." But the money was still gone. The transfer description made it worse. Authorized withdrawal. Authorized. That word sat there like an accusation. Samantha felt anger rising then, but it wasn't wild or messy. It was colder than that, more precise. Because if the bank had labeled it authorized, then somewhere in the system, someone had accepted that this was legitimate, which meant either the bank had made a serious mistake, or Daniel had done more than just move money. Around noon, Samantha called customer service. She kept her voice calm. That part mattered. Calm, people get more information. The representative verified her identity, reviewed the account, and confirmed the basics. Yes, the account was solely in her name. Yes, the transfer had already completed. Yes, the balance was now 0. Then Samantha asked the question carefully. "If this account is only in my name," she said, "how could someone else authorize a transfer?" There was a pause on the line, keyboard clicking. Another pause. Then the representative said, slowly, "If the account is solely owned by you, no one else should be able to authorize transfers. No one else should be able to." Samantha stared at the wall. That wasn't reassurance. That was confirmation. Something had happened that wasn't supposed to happen. She thanked the representative, ended the call, and sat very still. Maya watched her from across the room. "What now?" Samantha looked back down at her phone, at the transaction date, at the amount, at that word again. Authorized. Her father had sounded smug, too smug, not nervous, not defensive, certain, and suddenly that certainty didn't feel reckless. It felt practiced. Samantha grabbed her bag and stood up. Maya blinked. "Where are you going?" "To the bank." "For what?" Samantha opened the door, then stopped just long enough to answer. "Because either my father did something illegal," she looked down at her phone one more time, "or someone inside that bank helped him. And when she got there, she was about to hear something that made this a lot worse. That's when it stopped being a mistake and started being a method." The bank didn't feel different when Samantha walked in. That was the unsettling part. Same quiet line, same neutral colors, same low hum of printers and polite conversations. Nothing about the place suggested that something had gone wrong, at least not on the surface. But Samantha wasn't here for the surface anymore. She approached the counter, her posture steady, her voice controlled. "I need to review a transaction on my account, in detail." There was something in her tone that made the employee skip the usual script. Within minutes, she was seated across from a bank specialist in a small office. Name tag, Eric Dalton, mid 30S, calm, careful. "Let's take a look," he said, pulling up her account. Samantha watched his expression closely as he scrolled. At first, nothing. Then, something small. A flicker. Almost unnoticeable. "What?" Samantha asked. Eric hesitated. "I just want to confirm a few things first. You didn't authorize this transfer?" No. You didn't share your login credentials, password, PIN? No. He nodded slowly, then turned the screen slightly toward her. This transfer, he said, wasn't done online. Samantha leaned forward. It was authorized over the phone. The room seemed to narrow. Phone? She repeated. Eric nodded. Someone called in, went through the verification process, answered security questions correctly. Samantha's mind moved quickly now. Security questions. Not passwords, not codes sent to her phone. Questions. The kind of things that didn't change. What kind of questions? She asked. Eric clicked again. Standard ones. Date of birth. Previous address. Possibly your mother's maiden name. Samantha's stomach tightened slightly. Those weren't secrets. Not to Daniel. He hadn't broken into her account. He had walked in. Maya's voice echoed in her head. How did he even get in? Now she knew. He didn't need access. He needed familiarity. Samantha leaned back in her chair, processing that. It felt invasive in a different way. Not technical, not sophisticated. Just personal. Is that enough? She asked. To move that amount of money? Eric didn't answer right away. And that pause? That was new. It shouldn't be, he said finally. Samantha's eyes sharpened. Shouldn't be? For a transfer of that size, he continued carefully, there are additional verification steps. ID confirmation, possibly a callback, sometimes even in-person authorization. But that didn't happen. It wasn't a question. Eric exhaled quietly. No. Silence stretched between them. Now the problem was bigger. Because Daniel, knowing her answers, explained how he started the process, but it didn't explain how he finished it. Then how did it go through? Samantha asked. Eric turned the screen back toward himself, scrolling deeper into the transaction log. And then he stopped. There's a manual override here. Samantha frowned. What does that mean? It means an employee bypassed part of the verification process and approved the transaction manually. The words landed heavier than anything so far. Because now, this wasn't just about Daniel. Someone inside the bank had looked at that request and decided it was okay. Why would they do that? Samantha asked. Eric shook his head slightly. I don't know. Sometimes it's human error. Sometimes someone sounds convincing, confident. Confident. That word fit Daniel too well. Samantha felt something settle into place. This wasn't random. This wasn't a glitch. This was a chain of decisions, one built on assumptions. And every one of those assumptions had worked in his favor. Until now. What happens next? She asked. Eric's tone shifted slightly. More formal now. This transaction is going to be reviewed internally. Once a manual override is flagged, it triggers an audit. Samantha held his gaze. Will he be contacted? Another pause. Then, yes. Not dramatic, not threatening, just inevitable. Samantha nodded once, standing up. She didn't call her father, didn't warn him, didn't even text. Because for the first time, she didn't need to confront him herself. She just needed to wait. And 3 days later, his phone rang. 3 days later, his phone rang. Daniel Reyes almost didn't answer it. The number wasn't saved, no caller ID name, just a string of digits, the kind most people ignore. But Daniel had been in a good mood all morning. That kind of mood, the one that comes after a problem, disappears. His loans? Gone. Pressure? Gone. For the first time in months, maybe years, he felt ahead. So he picked up. Hello? Hi, this is Karen from Horizon Bank. I'm calling regarding a recent transfer associated with an account linked to Samantha Reyes. Daniel leaned back in his chair, one ankle resting over his knee, relaxed, comfortable. Yeah, he said casually, that was me. No hesitation, no concern. From his perspective, this was routine. Confirmation maybe, paperwork. He had already justified it in his mind a dozen different ways. Family money, shared history, temporary solution. Simple. On the other end, Karen's tone remained neutral. Thank you, I just need to verify a few details. Who authorized this transfer? Daniel smirked slightly. I did, he said. It's my daughter's account. There it was again, that same confidence. The same assumption that the relationship explained everything. A brief pause. Then Karen asked the question that shifted the ground beneath him. And what is your authorization status on the account, Mr. Reyes? Daniel blinked. It was subtle, almost nothing, but it was the first break in his rhythm. My authorization? He repeated. Yes, Karen said. Are you listed as an authorized user or joint account holder? Daniel sat up a little straighter now. Well, I used to be, he said. I'm her father. Silence. Not empty silence. Measured silence. The kind that forces you to hear your own words again. Karen continued, calm and precise. I understand. However, I need to confirm your current authorization. Are you listed on the account at this time? Daniel's confidence started to thin. I helped set it up, he said. It was originally under both of us. Originally, another pause, then Karen's voice, unchanged. Our records indicate that the account is solely owned by Samantha Reyes. There are no additional authorized users. That's when it happened. That small, unmistakable shift from control to uncertainty. Daniel's fingers tightened slightly around the phone. Well, she knew about it, he said quickly. We talked about it. Not true. But it sounded plausible, and that had always been enough for him. Until now. I see, Karen replied. In that case, can you confirm the authorization credentials used during the transfer? Specifically, your listed access permissions or verification identity tied to the account. Daniel opened his mouth, and nothing came out because there was no answer. No credentials, no formal access, no legitimate authority. Just answers to questions he wasn't supposed to be answering. Just confidence where there should have been proof. Seconds passed. Long enough to feel, long enough to understand. Karen spoke again, her tone unchanged but now heavier. Mr. Reyes, at this time, we are unable to verify your authorization on this account. Daniel's chest tightened slightly. And as a result, she continued, this transaction is being flagged as unauthorized pending further investigation. Unauthorized. The word hit differently now. Not abstract, not technical. Direct. Real. Consequential. Daniel didn't argue. Didn't push. Because for the first time since that phone call with Samantha, he didn't have control of the situation. The call ended shortly after. No resolution, no reassurance, just process. Just consequences beginning. Across town, Samantha sat at her desk, her phone lighting up with a new notification. From the bank, she picked it up slowly. Read the first line. And for the first time since this started, something shifted. But whether it was relief or something else entirely would only become clear when the full truth came out. What actually happened wasn't just one mistake. It was a chain. And now that chain was finally being pulled tight. Samantha didn't rush to open the notification. That might sound strange, but after everything, she had learned something important over the past 3 days. Information lands better when you're ready for it. Still, her fingers didn't hesitate for long. She unlocked her phone. Opened the message. Your recent transaction has been flagged for review. Temporary credit has been issued while the investigation is ongoing. Temporary credit. Her balance refreshed. The number was back. Not permanently, not officially, but it was there. Every dollar. Samantha exhaled slowly, leaning back in her chair. It wasn't relief, not fully, not yet. Because temporary meant one thing. This wasn't over. Over the next 48 hours, the details came together piece by piece. Not all at once, not in one dramatic reveal, but in layers. The bank conducted a full internal audit of the transaction triggered by 2 critical factors. The manual override. The failed authorization verification during the follow-up call. Here's what they found. Daniel had called the bank posing as someone with legitimate access. He passed the first layer of security, easily answering personal questions tied to Samantha's identity. That part wasn't illegal on its own. It was the next step that mattered. When the system prompted for higher-level verification credentials he didn't have, the process should have stopped. But it didn't. The employee handling the call made a judgment decision. Daniel sounded confident, familiar, certain. He spoke like someone who belonged. And that was enough for that moment. The employee issued a manual override, bypassing the required identity confirmation and approving the transfer. A decision made in less than 2 minutes. A decision that moved everything. But the system hadn't ignored it. It flagged it quietly. And when Samantha raised the question, that flag turned into an investigation. By the time Daniel received that call, the system already knew something didn't add up. The bank concluded the transaction was unauthorized. Proper verification protocols were not followed. The manual override was improperly issued. Result? The transfer was fully reversed. Not temporarily. Not conditionally. Permanently. Every dollar returned to Samantha's account. When the final confirmation came through, Samantha didn't celebrate. She didn't cry. She just sat there. Still. Processing. Because the money coming back wasn't the most important part anymore. It was what came with it. Clarity. She replayed that first call in her head. I used your college fund. The confidence. The laugh. Every cent. At the time, it sounded like certainty. Now, it sounded like something else. Assumption. Samantha stood up slowly and walked to the window. Outside, campus life moved like nothing had happened. People talking, walking, living inside their own separate stories. And for the first time in days, she felt steady again. Not because things went back to normal, but because now she understood exactly what had happened and exactly who she was dealing with. For Daniel Reyes, the outcome didn't resolve quietly. The bank didn't press criminal charges immediately, but that didn't mean there were no consequences. His accounts were flagged for fraud risk monitoring. The loan he had paid off, reinstated. Fully. With additional penalties tied to the reversal process. And perhaps more importantly, there was now a formal record of attempted unauthorized access tied to his name, which meant every future financial interaction would carry that weight. Slower approvals, more scrutiny, less trust. And then there was the personal side. Daniel called Samantha twice, then 3 times. She didn't answer. He left a voicemail. Casual at first, then defensive. Then something closer to frustrated. You didn't have to go that far, he said in one message. It was already handled. But that wasn't true. And for once, Samantha didn't feel the need to correct him. She simply didn't respond. Because the dynamic had shifted. Completely. The bank's internal fallout. The employee who issued the manual override faced disciplinary review. Not dramatized. Not exaggerated. Just procedural reality. A failure to follow protocol, especially on a transaction of that size, doesn't disappear. Whether it resulted in retraining, suspension, or termination, Samantha never found out, and she didn't ask, because that part no longer belonged to her. A week later, Samantha sat in the exact same spot where this started. Same desk, same laptop, same tuition page, but everything about the moment felt different. The number was still there. Only now, so was the balance to match it. She hovered over the payment button for a second, not out of hesitation, out of awareness. Then she clicked. Payment submitted. No delay. No interruption. No dependency. Her phone buzzed almost immediately after. A message from Daniel. She glanced at it, didn't open it, didn't need to. Instead, she locked her phone and set it down beside her. Outside, the light had shifted late afternoon, settling into evening. Samantha leaned back in her chair, exhaling slowly. Not relief. Not anger. Something quieter. Something final. Because in the end, this wasn't about a transfer. Or a mistake. Or even the money. It came down to one question. The one the bank asked. The one he couldn't answer. And now, she didn't need anything else from him.
Was it really a mistake, or did he know exactly what he was doing?